I started working on this project in 2015, and I kind of just drew a line in the sand and said, I'm gonna pick a music project and I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do it until it's done. With me, the way that I approach writing, it's something that I do for myself to start, at least. You know, I can be honest, I can be angry, I can be vulnerable. The space that I write in is just my home studio. And I've had a few different spaces over time that I've had to modify to give me a little bit of a creative area where I can work on things. So I started this project solo, and it's nice to upfront take creative control and really start processing the ideas you have in your mind and, you know, feeling the emotions that are driving that and start to put those down. And as a starting point, I think as an artist, that's important to be able to get the ideas out. What's kind of cool in today's environment is there's a lot more that is accessible to a musician as you're getting started. And it's not to say that you're reliant on any of these things, but they do help inspire your imagination and develop a sound. So the writing process for me is really working in my home studio to lay down all the tracks that make up the songs and to really figure out what that composition needs to be for each song. And I don't need all of the resources that you would need in a professional studio to work out ideas. This also means that I have to understand that what I'm writing here and what I'm recording here are not the finished versions of things yet.
There's no doubt that you can make great sounding music much easier than you ever could before. And you can do everything on a laptop in your bedroom and it can sound really cool. But I do think that there will always be a need for a studio, for people that just need to get away and distance themselves from everyday life. And they can stop and go, this is my time to get creative and I choose to do it here. And we're going to use great sounding rooms with great sounding gear, and we're going to create a piece of art, and it's going to help define me.
Moving into the production phase of this, I had to make some choices. I had to decide, like, what am I going to go into the studio and perform myself, and what areas might I benefit from bringing in some other artists or some other artists and producers to help me with.
If I'm producing an artist or working with the artist, I like to make it a goal to try to get into their brain and see how they're picturing the song to be, what's their approach musically. You know, I listen to everything. I like to think I can attempt to play everything. If I'm doing a rock session on drums, it's very important to get the rock sound. To me, the best board to run rock drums through is SSL. Because it gives you that crunchy sound, you know, that grit. It's like, this ain't the genre to be clean. So the flow, typically, when you're working with the artist, my job would be, you know, to establish what's the best drum sounds. And then the engineer's job is, you know, to make sure everything's being recorded right. You know, running the mics through the correct preamps, because mics respond differently to different amps. And that's a part of finding the drum sound as well. So this project, Razed by Rebels, it's been very interesting today as far as doing the drums for it. The most challenging thing today was Nowhere Left to Run. Yeah, that was the most challenging today. Had about 3 different patterns in it. And then some of the patterns were like, you do a tom groove and then the kick has to land in a weird spot. And then you have your left hand doing another groove that's different from this hand. My kick drum got off a little bit. And you have to make it all groove together.
Get nuts, dude.
That was sick.
So then the second session that we did, I came in and did all the rhythm guitar parts. It was just me and Juan working together. In some of the songs, there was a lot of different guitar work going on. So we wound up switching guitars. I think we wound up using 4 different guitars that day. We had a couple different cabinets that we had set up. We ran through a handful of different amp heads, some beefier, some gainier. And then we had a pedal board set up that Juan was helping to control. You know, it was our goal to really broaden out the guitar tones that we were able to capture and to create a little bit more of a layered guitar sound, which was cool because, you know, it started to build from there. You've got drums, you've got guitars, you've got a lot of the meat going on at that point. So that put us in really good shape for our 3rd session, which was bass.
Cool. So there's a big difference between working with an artist who really doesn't know what they want and an artist who really does know what they want. The nice thing about on this project is it was a piece of cake. It was easy and it was fun. And part of the reason it was easy and fun is because the artist that I work with knew exactly what he wanted. And even though I had some room to improvise and do my thing with the parts, there is already a vision in place. And so having scratches that are way better than I'm used to having is fantastic. That makes my job a lot easier.
That felt really good to me.
Yeah, that's a keeper.
Cool. That's quick.
So as far as what we did today, you know, the technical side of it, I used several different basses. I used a Sandberg TT4, which is a really, really modern sounding active jazz bass that I love. And then I had my Baby, which is my Fender Tony Franklin PJ. And then I used my Hamer US 5-string because that thing is ultra modern. Every little nuance you can hear. I'm a nerd about my gear. I run that through my pedal board, which is the same pedal board that I use live, which a lot of people think that that's weird, but it sounds so good that I always wind up using it anyways. And then I split the signal from there to my Aguilar Tone Hammer DI, and then through my Aguilar DB810 cab. That, you know, just gives a little extra boom to blend in with the DI, and that's what you hear. I definitely call this industrial rock. And the industrial music that I'm a fan of, this has a lot in common with that. It has a lot in common with Filter and 9 Inch Nails and bands that I love. To me, I think that the bass players that stand out in that genre are the ones that understand mid-range. It's not just about low end. You gotta be really conscious about the frequency that you're living in. I like putting it on both pickups, giving it some distortion to actually boost the mids. And even if it cuts a little bit of low end out, it works, you hear it more. And not to be afraid of using a pick and some distortion on this. There's a lot of bite, there's a lot of grit, and a lot of mids. You hear it, it cuts through.
Yeah, that last chorus felt great too. Yeah, it sounded really good.
For each of the sessions that I did, I spent as much time as I possibly could just practicing those parts that I was going to play. For me, who, you know, I really consider myself more of a hobbyist musician, I'm not doing this every day, I had to work at it to really be prepared to be able to get those tracks done in a day. For piano, it was pretty easy. I could set up my MIDI keyboard at home and I could play along with the songs. For vocals, I spent about 2 or 3 months working with a vocal coach once a week just to do some skill building around singing.
Is it strange to be choking on the antidote?
That definitely made a difference for me, just to learn a little bit more technique and to get my body prepared to go in and do the best job that I possibly could with vocals.
These missing parts of me are cut onto a million pieces.
That was great.
So after we had most of the vocals temped in, the next real step was to do a synth session.
Jason flew out to me and we had a 48-hour period where we were able to work very closely together to come up with a lot of the synth parts for all the music that he had brought him. So we set up this large synth table, and I picked some hardware from my collection that I thought would work well. Most of them were analog. We chose the ARP Odyssey, the Korg Minilog, the Behringer V-Mine 12, the Roland SEO2, and the Novation Peak, which is a really great sounding digital synth. We took a lot of the parts and ran them through Electron's analog heat, The electron analog heat is a distortion and saturation box that affects the sound in stereo. So you could actually treat the analog heat almost like another section of the synthesizer. Synthesizers are kind of the coolest instruments ever because you're actually hearing the sound of electricity. And using an analog synthesizer gives you that human sound, and it just has this warm feeling that just brings a completely different element to any music.
My approach to working with artists on this project was just to set them up and let them explore the pieces of this project that were theirs. I wanted to work with people that really helped me to stretch and grow and just to learn from.
Every session that I do, I'm reminded that I still have a lot of room to grow. There is no, I figured it all out, I'm done now.
You know, I definitely appreciate challenging jobs because if you're not challenged, then you're not growing. And so I like to be challenged because I want to grow, you know.
The thing that I love the most is when it's the end of the day, you got playback going and everyone in the room is just proud. That's awesome. That is my absolute favorite part.
Oh yeah, just a scream, huh? Okay, yeah. Ah! It's like battle cry.